Welcome to the Smart Thinking Podcast. This is my dad, Ted.
Welcome to the Smart Thinking Podcast. I'm your host, Ted Knightsky. When I was prepping for this episode, entitled Please Stay, I couldn't stop thinking about the KWS song, Please Don't Go, from the 90s. Sorry, I'll put that in the Smart Thinking playlist on Spotify for you if you've never heard it before. Anyway, this episode was sparked by my conversations the last few weeks with principal networks and superintendent meetings and other groups I've been working with, because these senior leaders are in their systems and buildings and they're on the verge of finding a little problem. The problem being, we don't have a proactive way to recognize or understand how everybody is doing. The additional problem is not very simple. Well, it's that our talent is not sticking around and we need to get ahead of it or find ourselves run over by buffaloes who are going to their storms, and unfortunately, as a result, they're leaving. And sometimes we're the ones creating those storms. So, what do? Well, we remember one common thing, which is that whenever there's a problem, we need a process. And workplace storms are often very sneaky. And no matter what you do, the workplace culture and the needs of employees is something to pay attention to with frequency. On the last episode, we talked about the need to focus on people understanding their expectations. Well, it's time to shift that conversation now as we head into spring to a conversation around what do we need to do different in order to support the people around us and that we serve. Did you hear the question? What do we need to do different in order to support them? That puts all the weight of engagement and empowerment back on us alongside them, because proactively understanding the people around you is critical, especially to understanding what they need in order to feel and find success. That's so important, friends, because a behavior ignored is a behavior reinforced. And in order to support staff, we need to find out what we are not seeing. Not seeing things in the culture is a gigantic blind spot for all of us. And too often we are walking blind, and sometimes that ends up having us smashing our faces into poles that are too low that we never saw or didn't even know exist. And when we do that, that smash in the face is usually as a result of the people around us looking to leave because they're burned out, confused, frustrated, or disengaged. So let's get them to stay. Before we get into the strategy, we need to really start to think about a few things. And the first thing we need to do is remind ourselves why we matter. Because you really matter. Because you're a leader. You're someone with influence over other people, and every single day people are watching you, learning from you, and growing just by your own presence. People are depending upon you to be the best version of yourself, so we need to find different ways every single day to fuel that version so that when we show up, we can be a leader. While also being a follower, someone who demonstrates the CARE principle, collaborating, owning their own success, being resilient, and being engaged purposefully, because that's what leaders do. They lead and follow. And remember, you're also a leader who leads with empathy, someone constantly asking themselves, what would it be like to be them? How could I do things differently? And what could I do if I were in that position? You're also a reflective leader, asking yourself what went well and what would I change for tomorrow? And you're finally a buffalo because you fix what's bothering you. You charge into the storms that you are facing with optimism, perseverance, resiliency, and finally, a true belief that you can get through that storm by taking it on. Ideally, you do all of this by utilizing your strengths to influence others to find happiness, a buffalo mindset, and engagement. Now, before I get into the process, a quick story. I'm a huge believer in the application of Clifton Strengths Finders in my life and work. Our entire staff at CISA 6 understands their strengths, and I expect every one of our leaders to use the strengths with frequency to frame what we each bring to the table, to spot opportunities to utilize others in ways that support their strengths, and most importantly, to identify pinch points and conflict in our day-to-day lives and work. One of the coolest things for me as a strengths coach is helping others with moments of clarity and discovering how they manifest their strengths in everything that they do. I mean, tunnel vision clarity and understanding of how their strengths are both supportive of their goals and sometimes create stubbornness and a level of self-advocacy that can lead to conflict. This question was asked of me a couple of weeks ago, and it felt amazing. Dad, will you strength coach me? This might have been the most exciting thing that has been asked of me by my son since he asked me to be a soccer coach when he was 5. A few weeks ago, my 22-year-old 8th grade social studies teacher, son, and I went out for a morning coffee and sat in a shop in Milwaukee called Discourse that plays records and makes some pretty darn great beverages. The place has a great vibe, and it was ideal for the two of us to sit, talk, learn, grow, and reflect about his strengths. Now, before I tell you about Charlie, I want to also share that I coached my daughter before she headed off to Italy for her semester abroad. Okay. Yes, this is a little much from me to have had my entire family take their Clifton strengths, but I have to tell you, it allowed me as a father to reframe some of the frustrations I have had with my children over their lives. I mean, anytime you as a parent or a colleague hear yourself say things like, "Why can't they just?" Well, maybe they do not think that way or have the strengths to help them think or act or respond the way that you expect them to. However, having a mature and meaningful conversation with your adult children is it's like next level. Because we discovered that sometimes some of the pinch points in our relationship, his relationships with others, his relationship with his mom and sister, well, they were usually because of his strengths. Okay, back to Charlie. So we're sitting there and he gets out a pen and we have 2 copies of his full 34 strength report. I'm doing my warm-ups into the coaching session, having him review each of his top 10 and highlighting things that resonate with him from the descriptors all the way to the backside, which share his blind spots. I then ask him to rank the top 10 in how he sees them as his strengths, and then we begin coaching. Do you ever experience a joyful flow, like where time just kind of stands still? You have tunnel vision and you can very much focus in on what's going on. That's what was happening to me. Obviously, I really care about him. I mean, I love him and want him to navigate his life successfully and on his terms. And understanding your strengths, well, that allows you to do that. After he ranked and we discussed his strengths, he asked a question that was similar to one his sister had asked me weeks before. He said, "Hey, Dad, how do I compare to Grace?" It was at this point that we learned about a little thing I call pinch points. This is when 2 people with different strengths get stuck in strength loops. They are each equally operating from a point of strength and not willing to back out or stop to reflect to see what the other person is doing. That is, unless someone else points it out through reflection or inquiry. So there I am, coaching Charlie. And let me tell you a little bit about Charlie. I'm going to give you his top 10. Number 1 is developer. Number 2 is belief. Number 3 is relator. 4 is harmony. 5 is consistency. 6 is positivity. 7 is learner. 8 is empathy. 9 is context. And 10 is includer. So what are his strengths? Charlie's strengths are being able to take other people's ideas and develop them into his own. He has a very core, strong belief network and his values, and he's grounded in what he believes is right and wrong. It's easy for him to relate to other people. He likes things to stay the same a lot because consistency and harmony drive that. However, he's also incredibly positive and empathetic towards others. He loves to learn where things and ideas come from. He expects to be included and to include others. And finally, he drives all of that with his positivity. So what type of a man is he? Well, he's somebody who really cares a lot about other people, how other people feel, and how he makes them feel. So much so that sometimes it becomes his pinch point because he worries so much about others. Well, then he forgets to worry about himself. And that can lead him to some levels of nervousness and anxiety when he has to make hard decisions. And the reason it's hard for him to make hard decisions or be creative is because of his lower 34, or what we call his soft strengths. His 30, 31, 32, 33, and 34 are command, intellection, maximizer, strategic, and achiever. Charlie is not a perfectionist. He's also not going to shoot for the A's. He's not going to be the best at everything. Well, sometimes he can be, especially when it comes to athletics. But in the context of his soft strengths, he does not default to these different pieces. And number 34 is achiever. And that is something that came about very clearly for him as we started to coach. Because here's what he learned. His pinch points came to life, and his strength of working for and with others was prohibiting him from advocating for himself. It all came to a head when he asked that one question: what are my sister's top 10? And when I shared, he and I both began to laugh, and we used the strengths language to help him understand his relationship with her. These two absolutely love each other, yet there's always one little thing that gets between them. It's his number 34 and her number 1, achiever. She never understands how chill his approach is to life and his lack of worry, and he never understands her intensity. Boom! Through inquiry, we find ourselves understanding why the other is the way they are and what they need from each other. This coaching session was an interview with someone I have known since his first breath. However, it was also an interview and an opportunity for him to see himself and his environment in a new way. This, I believe, is the job of each of us. And in order to be great coaches, we need to spend more time inquiring and less time advising, which is why we need to do stay interviews. This whole conversation was sparked by my conversation with Charlie, because as Charlie and I were looking into and reviewing why he and his sister regularly had conflict, it was because, well, at our house, we have what is known as the be or better rule. And what that rule means is that every single day you are supposed to be your best for others, be there for others, and finally, and most importantly, get B's or better in school. And sometimes that was the ceiling for his sister and the floor for her brother. And when we would come home and they would have arguments, it's because of that achiever piece, the constant need to be their best, do their best, work hard, and be working all of the time. It's just not his thing. And as a result, sometimes when Charlie runs into achievers, he just can't understand how they view the world. And many times, achievers can't understand how he views the world. So while an achiever is out there running around trying to spend all of their time, energy, and effort on making something amazing for themselves, somebody like Charlie, who's a strong developer, just wants to take that idea, build it, make it better for themselves, and ensure everyone around him is included in the process. This coaching session with him was pretty awesome. It helped him understand how to advocate for himself and, more importantly, how to view the pinch points in life that were out there and getting in his way of being the best version of himself, which is why we need to spend time sitting with the people we work with and making sure that we understand what it is they need by going through a process. And the process is called a stay interview. So here is the process to support engagement and wellness for you. We need to employ a proactive opportunity to support the retention of the people who are in classrooms and schools and the workforce, because current engagement levels in the United States of America is a whopping 30% this quarter. Last year, 31% of teachers who are in their first, second, or third year of teaching left the profession. And when a teacher resigns, the cost to a school district typically refers to a lot of money. It refers to $10,000 to $25,000 depending on their district and how they were onboarded, how they were trained, and how much it costs to replace them through postings. Now, what's the process? Well, the process is stay interviews. It's something that our CPO, Rochelle, does with many of our employees, and she sits down and she shares with them different questions that allow us to learn about them. But I put these together in an effort to help you as principals, leaders of schools, to support each other. So this is the opportunity to proactively support each other to differentiate for all the needs of a teacher, regardless of their age, their experience, their season of life. It allows for the leader to truly grasp the needs of individuals and address micro issues in an effort to achieve other macro outcomes. Now, it's just not teacher specific, but the way I put this together, I wanted to put it together in the context of a classroom teacher to help you really understand how powerful a specific process can be to drive engagement and, more importantly, help retain staff. So the process is pretty simple. I recommend that you do this twice a year, in November and in March if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, because this is a great tool to utilize to help everybody really understand what's going on. So before I get into all the different categories, I just want to remind you of the process. This is a stay interview, not a keep interview. A keep interview is when you have somebody reapply for their job and you interview them. Many times when people deploy a stay interview, the employee can get a little nervous and not understand, why am I suddenly being asked all of these questions? Because it can feel like an interview. And the reason it can feel like that is because it is. It's an interview to find out about you, to make sure that we have what you need in order to be successful, that we give you voice and choice into the workplace, that we understand what you are dealing with, what motivates you, what helps you, and most importantly, what we can do to support your success. So I've got a bunch of categories here. I'm going to read the questions, and as I do, I just want you to reflect upon what would your answers be. Maybe even taking a second to pause after I ask 2 or 3 questions to think through your own answers. So, first category is job satisfaction and motivation. Now, I wrote these questions with a positive intent. So question number 1 is, what do you enjoy most about teaching here? What aspects of your job give you the most fulfillment? What motivates you to continue teaching with us? Are there any specific experiences or accomplishments that have made you feel proud in your role? Did you hear that? Did you hear the way those questions were? They're not the typical questions, friends. These are Buffalo questions. These are optimistically driven questions looking for the positive things that are going on in your life so that we can reinforce those, look for those, keep those, and ensure that you will stay so we can keep creating the conditions that support your job satisfaction and motivation. What do you enjoy most about teaching here? What are you doing? What accomplishments have you had? Okay, next category, work environment. This is one of my favorite. How would you describe the support you receive from your colleagues? Did you hear that? Too many times, too many people are sitting there looking up. They're waiting for the principal, the assistant principal, the superintendent, I don't know, some foreign object to come flying in to help them out and support them. But at the end of the day, how would you describe it from your colleagues? Are we collaborative? Are we leading each other? Are we supporting each other? Do you have what you need in order to be successful on a parallel journey alongside the people who are all working with kids? The next question, do you feel that the school environment helps you succeed in your teaching goals? And if not, what changes would improve this? Did you hear that question? If not, what changes? In other words, if you have a complaint, what's the solution? And how would you rate the work-life balance in your current role? This is super important. And I want to just stop right there because I was working with a school that had a lot of younger teachers in it. I mean, younger being younger to the profession. And when we asked that question to them, we started to see this really cool theme. You see, when you're a brand new educator, one of the things that we do is we slide you in right alongside all the veteran educators because why wouldn't we? So we give you duties, we give you responsibilities, we put you on committees, and we do all different types of things in a job you've never had before. Which, after asking stay interview questions, you should be reflecting on, what are we doing this for? Now, I don't care what you do for a living. If you're brand new to an organization, the organization is responsible for work-life balance. This whole idea of new people need to be worked hard until we break them in, that's insane. This is 2025. People are shopping jobs. There aren't enough people for all of the jobs that we have, and we can no longer just take advantage of the fact that people can easily be replaced because they can't, and that's a horrible mindset. So, how would you rate the work-life balance in your current role? Well, when we started asking new teachers that, we found out something really interesting. They didn't understand why they had to do morning duty, why they had to do lunch duty, why they had to give up their planning periods to sit on committees, because they had never had a fifth week of school before, and suddenly they're out being the crossing guard, or they're doing lunch duty or detention duty, and they can't have balance because now they're taking all of their work home. I want you to think about being a brand new teacher in 2025, in a world where a new teacher in the United States likely makes around between $42,000 and $48,000 coming right out of college. They go home, and maybe they have a roommate, maybe they have a spouse. They likely are living with people or hanging around with people who graduate from college who are not teachers, who when they come home do not have lesson plans to develop, papers to grade, and all different types of things. Now, I know you veteran teachers on here are like, that's part of the job. Yeah, it is. But in your first year, if you have no time during the workday to do any of this, and now you're doubling up or tripling up on the workload expectations because they're new, and they're going home to a friend who's an actuary, or their friend is an insurance underwriter who works from home 4 days a week and has a food truck and a Ferris wheel at their office, why would you keep doing this job if there's no work-life balance? And frankly, how would we have ever figured that out had we not heard from the voices of our new staff? And finally, under work environment, is the physical environment of the classroom and the school conducive to your teaching style? What a great question. If you're a new teacher or an older seasoned teacher and you just have old clunky furniture and you're looking around and there's all of these things, how would we ever know that question unless we asked? Under professional growth, do you feel you have opportunities for professional development here? And if yes, what would enhance them further for you? How do you feel about the support for growth in leadership or specialized roles? In other words, do you see yourself having the opportunity to move up the career ladder in our organization? Are there enough opportunities to collaborate with other teachers or share best practices? And finally, do you feel that you get to utilize your strengths daily? Let's talk about recognition and feedback. Now, all these questions I'm asking, I'm going to put out for you. They're all typed up. I'll give you the document. But at the end of the day, please, 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 please do not sit someone down and ask them 26 stay interview questions. Instead, just use this as a beautiful smorgasbord of questions for you to choose from to develop what works for your culture, and then go in and ask questions and do stay interviews. 4 to 10 questions at the most. Recognition and feedback. Do you feel recognized for your hard work and achievements? In what ways? How do you prefer to receive feedback from administrators, peers, or students? Is there anything that you think could improve the way we give feedback at the school? Those are great questions. And again, they're going to help you stay because I'm going to empower you with the opportunity to speak to me so that I can create those conditions. Let's talk about challenges and barriers. What are some of the challenges you face in your current role? How do you manage them? Are there any obstacles or roadblocks you feel hinder your ability to perform at your best? Is there anything about your workload or responsibilities that you find overwhelming? If I never asked those questions, how would I ever know that? Until the day they decide to leave. Exit interviews are reactive situations with lagging data on one person. I can't do anything with that. These stay interviews? Proactive. Leading data. Indicators that allow us to really help create conditions that support the success of others. Now, let's get into school culture. In one word, how do you describe the overall culture of our school to your family and friends? Did you hear that? Think of how impactful that is, because right now, I'm going to hear from you words like energetic, difficult, overwhelming, unbelievably fun. Do you feel a sense of community and belonging here amongst the staff? Are there any aspects of the school's culture that you think could be improved? And when you feel optimistic here, what creates that feeling for you? Oh, I loved when I wrote that one. All right, let's talk about retention and commitment. 3 questions. What would make you consider leaving the school? Are there any specific factors that would make you reconsider staying? What would make you stay longer at this school? And do you see yourself teaching here for the long term? And what would make that more likely? I wish somebody would have asked me that question my first, second, third, 15th year. Any of those questions, actually. But the last one, do you see yourself teaching here for the long term? And if not, why not? And what can we do to make that happen? Okay, student engagement and support. Now, friends, if you're not an educator and you're listening to these, you can just strike where it says student and insert other things. Where it says teacher, insert firefighter, EMS, police, lawyer, dentist, doctor, salesperson, whatever. So, student engagement and support. How do you feel about the level of student engagement in your classes? Do you feel you have adequate support to address students' academic and emotional needs? And how do you feel about the support and communication you get from parents? Ooh. There's a question that we should be asking, because if there is a pinch point in our strengths, it is the misunderstanding of the role of parents in school. Too many times, parents think that their job is to be a referee or a hero or a firefighter and come flying in and fix things, where we need to find out from staff, how do you feel about it, so we can communicate to parents and help them understand their role and their lane. Okay, friends, those were a lot of questions. And again, I'll put out a document for you. We'll put it on the Smart Thinking Facebook page. We'll put it on the CISA 6 page here in a couple of days. But at the end of the day, I want to give you this in the context of 2 processes to approach it. The first is the leadership interview. I gave you all those questions, and a leader comes in, sits down with a colleague or a staff member, and just asks a handful of questions, specifically catering to that person. So you can take the entire document with all 20 plus questions, highlight out knowing who's coming in, ask them those questions, get those answers, and then figure out what to do for them. And the most important thing here is that leadership must practice the 2 ears and 1 mouth principle. We are not here for a stay interview to hear you. We are not here to hear you justify things. We are not here for you to defend things. We are here for you as a principal or a leader to listen to the people that you support so that they'll stay. One of the things that's really powerful about this is many of the things that will be brought up to you are things that you can immediately act upon, that can be fixed, because many issues employees are facing are never getting discussed because there's really no opportunity to have a conversation based upon things that really matter to them. Everything is always objective-based or casual. Today we're getting together as a faculty, staff, or a committee, and hey, how's it going, Jen? Hope you have a great day. How about, hey, Jen, when you feel optimistic around here, what makes you feel that way, and what can I do to fuel that? Big difference. Now, the second process is a collegial interview with a problem-solving twist. So, I'm sure some of you are listening to this thinking, oh, I work with a lot of people. How in the world would I ever interview all of these people and evaluate them and address all the needs and answer all the emails and all the phone calls? Okay, I don't want to get in a boo-hoo cow pity party here, but at the end of the day, there's another way to use this process. The best way is to do stay interviews one-on-one and not with everybody, but just picking a handful of people throughout the year to just check in on them, especially our newest staff or the staff who feel like they might be vulnerable. So, the collegial interview process with a problem-solving twist is simple. Give sets of questions to your colleagues in a meeting and have them answer the questions to each other. Then, as they find opportunities for improvement, in other words, complaints, have them also include a strategy or solution to address it. Collect lists of things to keep or start doing, and then, as a collegial culture, find the opportunities to make it happen. It's not one person's job for the whole herd to learn how to charge into the storm. It's all of our responsibilities. So what you do is you have poster paper up around the room with the questions, and then you have everybody go up there with their Post-its and put the ideas they have for how they feel about the answer to that question, like what makes you feel optimistic here and what can we keep doing? And if a problem has emerged, then on that same sheet shows a strategy or solution driven from the wisdom of the crowd. Now, this is a lot. But a couple of reminders here. This is a stay interview, not a keep interview. And what that means is you're asking to figure out what to do to get them to stay here so you can proactively approach their engagement and support your culture. It is not a keep interview. Some people, when there are tight budgets or there's rumors of people being let go, will come to these interviews and think they're answering these to keep their job. That's not what's happening. And you need to make that very, very clear. And you need to be truly empathetic. You also need to find the time. Figure it out. Spending some time on the front end versus a ton of time on the back end is going to change your entire scope of leadership, your motivation, and your ability to serve others. And when you are doing this, be in full-blown curiosity mode. Now, caution. Some people do roundings in their organization, which is really important, and that's a totally separate, different-laned process. However, one of the cautions I have for you is when you have people from the outside come into your building and ask questions like this, they can create reports. And these reports come back to you, but they come back to a group of people, a whole bunch of people. And I just want to caution you because sometimes these reports come back to a leader. They don't know who the questions were asked to. They don't know where the answers came from. They don't know if they're real or not real. And most of the times, there are two behaviors that come from a system-wide report. The first is unfortunately cynicism. People don't have trust for things they don't learn on their own, and many times they'll create narratives in their head and they'll figure out that, or they'll say to themselves, well, they only interviewed the negative people on my staff, or I can't believe these people. Who are these people? I don't even know who these people are. And then as a result, that cynicism leads to a little bit of paranoia, and a leader walks down the hallway looking at everybody, kind of strangely trying to figure out who answered those questions so negatively about our culture. And the second one is a dismissal of the facts. Many times, leaders will get broad reports and read them and say, this isn't happening in my building. So, I'm going to end with the why. Why do we need to do stay interviews? Well, because micro actions lead to macro outcomes, and people getting their needs met, people feeling heard, seeing their ideas acted upon, and having a sense that the people who guide us understand them, well, that's the why. Because people will work harder with you if they really believe and see that you care about them, that you ask them questions in advance so that you and they can proactively charge into the storms that you will face. Because buffaloes are really powerful and impactful when they are independent. They can do some pretty amazing things. But as a herd, there is nothing, no predator or storm that could ever stop a fully engaged, fully empowered buffalo herd. So let's do some smart thinking. List the questions you could ask your teammates or colleagues to support them in staying. Identify your process to support stay interviews. And finally, list the people who would benefit from being asked the questions on what they need in order to stay here. That's it. That's the Smart Thinking Podcast. Hey, as always, thank you so much for listening. And please make sure to rate this podcast, share this podcast, and help me help others as we work hard every single day to help others figure it out so that they will stay. Also, thank you to the Well Pennies for the great music. And please remember to follow us on the Smart Thinking Facebook page. You can also follow our music on Spotify on the Smart Thinking podcast playlist. You can just search for that. And finally, and don't forget that you can go to the shop at CISA 6 for many of the products that I've described, and you can still get your Duke Storm book. We've sold over 500 of them, and we're pretty excited about it. We're making a big difference in the lives of little people, and we love hearing from you how the book is impacting student mindsets around being buffaloes. Okay, let's close out with a pivot on this process. Teachers and principals, friends and neighbors, loved ones, what if you did stay-type interviews with students and kids and athletes? This is the time of the year when they've kind of had it as well. So what if we ask the kids? What if we ask the kids about their school experience? Like, what do you enjoy most about your school? What are your favorite subjects or classes and why? What activities or clubs do you like being a part of and what keeps you involved? How do you feel about the environment here at school? Is there anything about school that you find exciting or fun? And if so, how can we keep that going for you? What makes you feel proud of your school? Are there teachers or staff members who motivate you or inspire you? And if so, what do they do? How do you stay focused and motivated when you're having a tough time with schoolwork? What do you feel helps you succeed or do your best in school? What challenges do you face in school and how do you overcome them? Grit. Is there anything you feel is missing or could be improved in our school environment? Are there any subjects or activities that you find particularly difficult? And then why? Do you feel supported by your teachers and classmates? How do you get along with other students in your grade or classes? Do you feel like your opinions and ideas are listened to in the school and they count? What are your goals for the future and how do you think school can help you achieve them? How can we help you prepare for what you want to do after graduation? If you could change something about your school experience, what would it be? And the last two. What would make you want to be even more involved in school activities or events? And what kind of changes would you like to see that could make school more fun or interesting? Can you imagine the little nuggets of excellence you'd get by asking students stay interview type questions? Well, don't imagine it. Do it. Children are our net promoters. They're the ones out there selling our schools, selling our ideas, selling our activities. How they describe school to their guardians is how the guardians and parents describe it to others. So let's find out all the ways to make everyone stay, to make everyone feel empowered, to make everyone feel listened to. Because at the end of the day, we are all misunderstood or misinterpreted because someone is not listening. Stay interviews allow the people around you to be heard and honored. And most of the time, the answers that expose a failed opportunity, they can be addressed really quickly. So let's fix what's bothering us. Let's have the conversations from a positive perspective. Let's buffalo into the storm for others. And let's make it a purposeful opportunity to inquire about our future and create a smoother pathway for everyone. Because everyone deserves to be heard, and every buffalo needs to understand what it is that's within them to make them stronger and faster. And the only way to get that out is by asking.
Maybe it could amaze me if I would step outside my door. And when, 'cause it would surely happen, discovering all that land and sea, and no one knows but me. And I've got nothing to do today, and I don't want it any other way. So I'm gonna sail myself away, 'cause I've got nothing to do today. it could amaze me if I were to step outside my door.